Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
That's right. Here we are right here, right now at the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Great to have you here. El Rushbo behind the golden EIB microphone at 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, it's elrushbo@eibnet.us. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the program, I got a fascinating email today from a friend thanking me for doing something. And it's good. Sometimes I do need an assist in staying in touch. Now, don't misunderstand here, but the email thanked me for announcing what the latest audience figures ratings are on the program, and I did this yesterday. I've actually mentioned it twice, but let me do it again just to set up the email. As you know, for the last 30, 25 years, whatever, we've been floating between 20, 22 million people, depending on when you take audience rates. It's a weekly cum number. The actual number, radio does ratings different than TV. And we talk about average quarter hour. That's how many listening in any 15-minute sweep during an hour. Then there's the weekly cum and the monthly cum. That's the grand total of everybody listening, the cum is. And there is the daily cum. The daily cum number here is it's up. It's always been around 10 to 12 million, and that's up too. Here's the upshot of it is that after the election, the audience of this program continued to grow. Subscribers at Rush 24/7 continue to grow. Subscribers at the Limbaugh letter continue to grow. This is not usual. Now, hang on, not bragging here. I'm setting this up to get to the email I got. And the numbers is pouring in now for March, but prior to those numbers, the weekly cum had been up now to 26 million and climbing. Usually, on a program like this, when you have an intense election that features a campaign of a minimum 1 year or longer, once the election's over, it results in the intensity usually lightens and fades away, and audience levels go back to what their historic norms are. Not the case this year on this program. The audience has continued to build. So I mentioned this. And the email I got thanked me for doing so. It's good to know that it's growing. It's good to know that we can tune in here at noon Eastern time every day and know that like-minded people are still here and in greater number. I just assume everybody knows this. I just assume, and maybe I assume too much, but I assume that everybody knows where the program ranks and that nothing has changed. 'Cause believe me, if it had, that would be the only thing in the news. And so since that's not in the news, I figured everybody was just up. But that's a mistake. I shouldn't assume people know these things. So the emailer wanted to thank me for mentioning this because it was a reinforcement, like a validation. It's kind of like that's the value of billboard advertising, by the way. Billboards don't actually sell you anything. They validate what you already buy or do by making it look like what you buy or do is really big. And it's out there for everybody to see. And so it was a validating thing to make the statement. Now, ratings are taken now constantly. It used to be they were taken 4 times a year. Now they're taken constantly. They fluctuate depending on a lot of factors, which is why I don't spend an inordinate amount of time talking about them. But I did because what's happened here is phenomenal, actually, if I don't mind saying so myself. And I just happened to mention it in passing, so I got this gratified thank you email note, so I wanted to repeat that. Now, my friends, we know that there is stupidity running rampant throughout this country. We know it instinctively. We know it directly because we encounter it. We see it. But some days it's just a little bit more predominant than others. Try this. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. I didn't see this because I don't watch MSNBC, but the headline of this, celebrity chef on MSNBC, there's no legal way for immigrants to actually enter the country. Okay, so let's read the opening paragraph. Celebrity chef Tom Colicchio claimed on MSNBC during a discussion of food policy. Food policy. They were having a discussion on MSNBC on food policy. What is food policy? Now, I can understand agriculture policy. Don't misunderstand. But what is this food policy business? Is there now food shaming? Is there now food fear? You go to bed each night fearful that you're going to get hungry before you wake up? And the left invents all these things. So they were talking about food policy with a celebrity chef. And the celebrity chef said that it's just a shame. This country we're so lacking and we're so backward. There's no legal way for immigrants to actually enter the country. No, what do you think the guy means? What do you think this guy actually means? Now, he's obviously a product of daily mainstream media. And the narrative in the mainstream media every day is this country has a lot of people that are mean-spirited and hateful. And they're bigoted and they're racist because they don't want anybody coming to America. And if they're here and if they come here illegally, we're going to throw them out. We're going to deport them. And we, therefore, very mean people. So they're talking about food policy, and that's the narrative that goes ricocheting around this guy's head. And then he says, yeah, there's no legal way for immigrants to actually enter the country, as though the very fact that they're illegal immigrants means we have a problem as a country. Now, the ignorance of celebrities has to be unlimited, because the truth of the matter is the United States has the most generous immigration policy of any nation on earth, and it isn't even close. What do you mean there is no legal way for immigrants to actually enter the country? What he means is, and it's even funnier, there's no legal way for illegals to come here and stay. And that means that we are rotten people. That means that we have a rotten country. What else could he mean? Because we most certainly do have legal mechanisms for immigrants to come here and become citizens, temporary work visas. There are any number of ways. Maybe so you might think Trump is shut. No. He can't possibly think Trump. You think this guy, an expert on food policy, might think Trump has shut down all immigration? I guess it's possible, given the reporting on Trump. I guess it is. Now, the host of this enlightening discussion at MSNBC was somebody named Ali Velshi. Ali Velshi used to be at CNN, but now he's over at PMSNBC. He brought up the topic of immigrants who are seeking a better life through work in the food industry. Aha! So now we're getting close to understanding what food policy is. So Ali Velshi, bringing up the topic of immigrants who are seeking a better life through work in the food industry, asked the celebrity chef about the relevance of immigration to the restaurant business. And the celebrity chef pointed out that his fellow panelist, another celebrity chef, Jose Andres, was an immigrant who came to this country, just worked night and day, became a business owner, and employs people now. So he said, we need to welcome immigrants to our country, and that's the problem right now. We can look at a broken immigration system, and you can look at illegal immigration. Well, there's no legal way for immigrants to actually enter the country. Good Lord, folks. All you can do is just laugh and understand, okay, this is occurring at MSNBC in the leftist media, and these people think they're bright. Let's move on to NAFTA. This is classic. This is literally classic. And it furthers my theory that Washington establishment types have no idea how to assess, how to judge, how to analyze, how to explain Donald Trump. Even though it's right in front of their face, even though if they wanted to, they could go read his book, The Art of the Deal. If they wanted to listen to what Trump tells them about negotiation and how he goes about it, they could learn. But they don't because, I guess, arrogance, we know best, we're the elites, we know how it's done. You see, in Washington, in the elite areas of government and worldwide organizations like the UN, U.S. Congress, just the Washington establishment, and similar organizations in other countries, negotiation is an entirely different thing, apparently, than the way it happens in, say, Trump's world in the area of construction and real estate. What they call negotiation statecraft. And statecraft is something only they can do. It requires a lot of training and a lot of experience and really a whole lot of intelligence. And it involves a lot of diplomacy, statecraft diplomacy, and you've got to be very, very careful of just exactly how you say what you say, and you never, ever give ultimatums. You don't ever do it. You don't offend. You don't ever say what you really mean. You don't ever even hint at what you're really going to do. And as such, like the Middle East peace negotiation, nothing ever gets done because the process becomes the actual story. The process, not a result, becomes what everybody seeks expertise in. But that's not Trump's world. Trump doesn't care about process except to the extent that it helps him accomplish what he wants to accomplish. Okay, so what do we know? We go back to the campaign. We know that Trump has said over and over again that NAFTA is a rotten deal for the United States. And he has said that he's going to do everything he can to either fix it or get us out of it. And he said this every day in and day out. Don't know how many times he said it during the campaign. It was as often as he said he was going to build a wall. It was as often as he said anything. It was one of his top 10 things. NAFTA, trade deals, rotten for the United States. Dumb leaders in America signed this thing and negotiated it. And this is why we're taking it on the chin, and I'm going to fix it. Well, there hasn't been much done on NAFTA up to now, but we're coming in on this magical deadline of the first 100 days, which is Saturday. And so there is a White House push to get a lot of things at least on the table and make it look like there's action on these things so that Trump can say that the first 100 days have been unlike what the media is saying they are. They're jam-packed with action. We're moving forward. We're showing a lot of progress, and we're going to get a lot of things done. It's the best 100 days of any president's 100 days. It's the greatest 100 days. Nobody's ever had a better 100 days than I've had, says Trump. And this NAFTA bit is just one of the elements. So what did he do? He announced that he's going to pull out of it. The heck with this. I can't get any action on it. I can't get any sympathetic agreement with me on this. We're just going to pull out. Washington had a cow. Oh, no. No, that's not how. Oh, God, what an idiot this guy is. We knew it was a mistake. Oh, this guy is, it's a bull in a Chinese. Oh, my God, this guy's embarrassing. You don't just, he can't pull out of it. Congress, it has to be, he can't, you just can't. Meanwhile, Trump is unfazed. And the next thing we know, Trump is saying that he got phone calls from the presidents of Mexico and Canada saying, no, don't. We would much rather come talk to you about it. We would much rather you stay in. We need you in NAFTA. We need the United States. Please don't pull out. Please don't pull out. Trump says, I just got phone calls from the president of Mexico, a great relationship with Mexico. The Mexicans love me. The Mexican president loves me. Greatest relationship with Mexico we've ever had. I just got a phone call from the president of Canada. Same thing. President of Canada loves me. We love him. Greatest relationship we've ever had with Canada. And they're begging me to sit down and talk about NAFTA. And I have told them that I'd be happy to. If we can come to an agreement, if we can fix this so it's no longer so unfair to America, and I'd be happy to sit down and talk to him. And it came up again. He had a little gaggle with the media in there with the president of Argentina, was in the White House. I think this guy was the first to call and congratulate Trump on election night, too. So anyway, Trump is asked about NAFTA, and he goes through this whole story. Now, Washington believes that we have narrowly averted a disaster, that the inexperienced know nothing, ribald, bodacious Donald Trump nearly destroyed one of the firm trade deals we've got by simply speaking up and shouting and ripping it apart and claiming we were going to pull out of it, causing a worldwide panic, when in fact the exact opposite is what has happened. These people simply, you wouldn't have practitioners of statecraft and diplomacy behave this way. In fact, most official Washington wouldn't even care to tackle NAFTA again, to fix it. It's a done deal. Been there, done that. It's over there. We don't think about it anymore with Trump. Major aspect of his campaign, he believes that it's a bad deal, that we're getting shafted and we're getting screwed. He said from the get-go he's going to fix that or we're going to get out of it. And the people who believe him are the presidents of Canada and the presidents of Mexico. I mean, I think this is classic. Whereas they think Trump is dangerously uninformed, dangerously unaware, dangerously bold, doesn't have the discipline to engage in the proper kinds of statecraft and diplomacy. The truth is that Trump has just begun the process of having this whole thing fixed and ending up in the favor of the United States, which is what he said he was going to do all the time. You've got to read Art and the Deal if you care about this. These people in Washington should. And one of the fundamental, integral parts of a negotiation is that you must be fearless and you must be able to walk away from it without any doubt, without any guilt. And you must be able to express your willingness to walk away. You don't need it if it's no good for you. It's right out there for anybody to read. They refuse to familiarize themselves with it. Anyway, there's more, lots more. We'll get to it when we get back. Now look at this headline in the New York Post. Canada, Mexico persuaded Trump not to withdraw from NAFTA. See how it works? Trump was off the reservation. Trump had gone loony. Trump had lost in marbles. But thankfully, Canada and Mexico, they called Trump and they said, hey, man, you got to come back. Hey, man, you can't just ditch NAFTA like this. And Trump agreed. So kudos to Canada and Mexico. That's the way the headline and story is written in the New York Post, because they don't. It's the exact opposite of what really happened. Here's Trump himself in Washington in the Oval Office. Reporter said, Mr. President, can you tell us how you came about the decision to renegotiate NAFTA?
Well, I was going to terminate NAFTA as of 2 or 3 days from now. The president of Mexico, who I have a very, very good relationship, called me. And also the Prime Minister of Canada, who I have a very good relationship, and I like both of these gentlemen very much, they called me. And they said, rather than terminating NAFTA, could you please renegotiate? I like them very much. I respect their countries very much. The relationship is very special. And I said, I will hold on the termination. Let's see if we can make it a fair deal, because NAFTA has been a horrible deal for the United States. It's been very good for Canada. It's been very good for Mexico. But it's been horrible for the United States.
So you see how this works. I got to get rid of this, but these guys who love me, and these guys who I like, and these countries that I really respect, they beg me. They beg me to come back in. And I owe that to them. But I still might pull out of this. Welcome, my friends. Great to have you here. El Rushbaugh, the fastest week in media. And we hit the phones. Scarlett in Scottsdale. Great to have you on the EIB network. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank God for you answering my call. I've listened to you since 1990, and I used to live in California, and I took my middle son to Long Beach one time to see you, and I've listened to you ever since, and now I'm in Scottsdale, and I listen to a California station because I like to listen early.
Well, thank you very much. I remember it was a Long Beach, California Rush to Excellence tour stop. I remember it well.
Yeah.
Good to know you were in the audience. It was a massive crowd. Thousands and thousands of people out there.
And you know what? You're the only person for that length of time that could be trusted, counted on. And let me tell you this, when I saw Donald Trump coming down the escalator in New York to announce, I looked around there were some people in the house here, and I said, he's going to win. And then I got criticized a lot, but I kept it to myself, and no matter what happened, I knew he was the person for this country. And the reason I called is that I wanted to tell you the reason the listenership in your area has gone up is because no one can count on anything else for certain. There's fake news, there's fake radio, there's fake newspapers, and you're the one person that I can count on for truth.
Really, there's a lot of people out there. I'm the person. That's very nice of you to say. I really appreciate that, because there's a lot of people out there.
There's a lot of people out there.
Well, look, Scarlett, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You know, I've this whole ratings business for the longest time, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here. But I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even look at the ratings anymore. We had a meeting with advertisers last fall, and I told them, you know, I don't even look at ratings anymore. I just assume if something goes wrong with them, I'll hear about it, and I never do. But I long ago ceased being a slave to the ratings. I've always tried to create what I've called ratings insurance, because they are going to fluctuate. They're going to go up and down. So why don't tie myself to any politician? They're going to go up or down, and I can't control what they're going to say. I can't control what they're going to do in their policies, when they're going to change their minds. I don't want to be the one that has to explain to people why some politician let them down. And I told the advertisers, the way I define whether or not this is working is how well you are doing as sponsors of the program. And that's also another metric. But it is what it is. So when I was told what the numbers are and how they've skyrocketed, I'll admit I was surprised, because it's so against type. After elections, this doesn't happen. And it's happening in every area of our business here. So I appreciate Scarlett weighing in on this. And all of this came up again, if you're just tuning in. I got an email from somebody today thanking me for mentioning this, because it's validating and reinforcing of the decision to tune in here every day. And I just assume everybody is aware of the status of the program. So that's that. Again, Scarlett, thanks much. Look at this headline in the Washington Post. This is an op-ed. So what if protesters are paid? Oh, really? So they're going to admit it now. Now, why are they admitting it? This is in relation to all of these protests all over the country. I don't care. Pick one. Pick any of them during the campaign. Pick any of the Trump rallies since he was inaugurated, when the first travel ban happened. Remember, there were tens of thousands of people at airports all over America and in the streets in New York, Washington, and Philadelphia. And we're saying here, folks, this is not organic. This didn't just happen. These people are bought and paid for. And then we have the evidence for it, because Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, he got his cameras inside a meeting with Robert Kramer during the presidential campaign. Robert Kramer is the husband of a Democrat representative from Chicago named Jan Schakowsky. Kramer runs an organization that hires and trains and prepares protesters and rioters to show up at various events. And he admitted on this hidden camera video that he was hired by the Hillary campaign to produce protesters and riots at various Trump rallies. And he's very proud of it. And he's bragging about how fine-tuned his operation is. This is just last fall. And we then later find out that this guy Kramer made over 100 visits to the White House. And I think 42 of those visits, somewhere around there, he personally met with Obama. Now, none of this surprises me. Obama's the original community organizer. Kramer is a community organizer in Obama's image. And Kramer goes in there, no doubt reporting to Obama how things are going. Why else would Kramer go in there? This is what Kramer does. He hires rioters. He hires protesters. He pays for the signs to be manufactured. And they pay for the transportation for these people to show up. On the protests of the first travel ban, you know what we found? We found that shortly after the election, people like Kramer got in gear, and they sent out paychecks and promises and memos to all the people who had signed up to be part of this massive rent-a-mob, and they were put on standby. They were told, stand by for a go message. We don't know when it's going to happen, but whenever Trump does anything that is worthy of massive protest, we're going to send you the go message. Well, the first travel ban was it. The first travel ban was announced, on a Thursday or Friday, and by Saturday, every major airport, major city had thousands of people protesting, making it look organic, like it was made up of legitimately angry protesters, when in fact they were bought and paid for. And they were there because they had been trained. They were there because they had been transported. They were paid because their signs had been given to them. And so now and outside of Kramer and the secret camera video, they're all denying this. They want us to believe that this outrage at Trump is real because they think everybody knows the Russians hacked the election and Trump's not a legitimate winner. It should have been Hillary. And that's why people are angry, because most people, the story went, most people understand that Trump didn't really win. The Russians cheated and they got the presidency for Trump. And this is justifying the outrage. And throughout this, whenever we allege that these people are basically rent-a-mobs, the denials would be fast and furious. Now, out of the blue, in the Washington Post, so what if protesters are paid? Now, why the hell admit this? This story has two authors. Would you like to know who they are? The first is a guy named Leo Gertner. You ever heard of Leo Gertner? Probably not. Let me tell you about Leo Gertner. He is a labor lawyer in Washington who previously worked as a, wait for it, grievance representative for janitors in Boston. The entire left wing in America is many things, but among those many things, it's a grievance industry. They live and die on the premise that their protests and their anger and their upset is all related to grievances of discrimination, inequality, unfairness, what have you. The other author, Moshe Marvit, a labor and employment lawyer and a fellow at the Century Foundation. He's the co-author of Why Labor Organizing Should Be a Civil Right. And they admit that their protesters are paid. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, and it doesn't mean anything. Now, I think it's just the opposite. There must be some reason. I mean, this is not something you would want to admit. They'd only admit this in these secret camera videos, hidden camera videos. Started out by saying on April 15th, thousands of protesters gathered around the country to call for President Trump to release his tax returns. And this is supposed to be organic. We're just supposed to think that there's this many people with nothing better to do, and they're seething with rage over Trump not releasing his tax returns. So on April 15th, they magically show up. Trump responded, as he often does, by tweeting, somebody should look into who paid for the small organized rallies yesterday. The election's over. Then these guys claim that Breitbart picked up on the tweet. They ran a rambling article linked to its extensive coverage about how George Soros is single-handedly funding the organization. Anyway, these guys go on to basically admit that there is an element of this. But they say it's not nearly all, and so what? Just because somebody is paid does not mean they're fake. Just because somebody is paid doesn't mean it's illegitimate. Well, the fact that they are paid is a major aspect of this, and it's something that up until now they have lied about and desperately sought to keep quiet about. And here's something you may not know. These guys cite Rosa Parks as justification for what they do. They say, take, for instance, Rosa Parks, often referred to as the mother of the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on an Alabama bus to a white passenger after a long day of work. Rosa Parks, however, let me pause and ask you a question. No wrong answer here. You don't have to shout the answer. Answer this to yourself. How many of you, all your life, believe that Rosa Parks just happened to get on a bus one day? And just happened. Just for whatever reason, the building of frustrations boiling over, she couldn't take it anymore. But one day she got on the bus and she refused to go to the back. Just out of clear blue, just happenstance. And from that, a major movement was born. How many of you believe, because the presentation of this, the story of Rosa Parks is that she was basically invisible, just an ordinary, average, discriminated against African American who finally had had enough and wasn't going to take it anymore and told the people on the bus what for. These guys even admit that Rosa Parks was part of an organized effort, and they're taking pride in it. They say she refused to give up her seat on an Alabama bus. Rosa Parks, however, did not stumble upon her role in history simply because her feet were tired. By the time of her December 1st, 1995 arrest, Parks and her husband were seasoned activists with more than 20 years. And the event was orchestrated, it was planned, and so forth. They never want you to admit this or to know this. They want you to think all of this left-wing outrage, protest, riot, whatever, is organic and is due only to real-world events brought on by Republicans or conservatives. They never want you to know these things are bought, paid for, staged. But now, because of Trump's tweet, they're having to admit that they are paying people, but now they're having, this doesn't mean anything, but it clearly does. Progress yet again. Score another one for Trump. We'll be back after this. Don't go away, folks. Back to the phones. Here is Paul in Bloomington, Indiana. Welcome, sir. Great to have you on the EIB network. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine, Rush. How are you? My point is that I'm a supporter of Donald Trump, and his line in the sand is the wall. Now, when Obama drew his line in the sand with Syria on the chemical weapons, nobody expected Obama to back that up. With Trump, from the very beginning, it was the wall, the wall, the wall. Everybody expects Trump to back up his word. Now, in addition to that, you're only talking about $1 billion in that budget, which is not a lot of money, number one. Number two, once and for all, he can crush these Democrats with this thing about the government closing down, so on and so forth. Nothing's closing down. Social Security checks are going to go out. Food stamps are going to go out. So maybe somebody can't go to Yellowstone for 2 days or something. But here's his opportunity to really set the tone, go his way, and not capitulate with all these other Republicans. They have no guts whatsoever. They're pitiful.
Well, I'm sure Trump would tell you he's not caving. He's simply waiting until the actual budget talks begin for next year in September to actually include funding for the wall. But,
Rush, you know yourself, the sooner you put something off, the more you put it off, it just continues to fade away, and they keep justifying. I mean, it's the same old thing. I mean, that's just what they do. I was hoping that he would be able to set the tone there and give these people in Washington, these Republicans, a little bit of guts. But your point is absolutely right. I mean, these Democrats, they're in lockstep. Whether they're in power or not, they're in charge. I mean, they just never back down. This is incredible. These Republicans, I mean, it's just...
Let me ask you a question. When it comes to the wall and your anger, dissatisfaction, whatever, with Trump, are you really upset about the wall? Are you mad that the Democrats are getting away with the threat of a shutdown again to force Republicans into doing things they actually said they wouldn't do?
Well, the Republicans, it's a given that the Democrats will always get the Republicans to do whatever they want to do. I mean, that's just proven. I'm disappointed because this was an opportunity for Trump, number one, to stand with what he said he was going to do, where everybody expected him to do that, where no one expected Obama to back up his words. And on top of that, it was an opportunity for him at the same time to put this thing away once and for all about this government shutdown stuff and show the Republicans how to lead.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate with you, because what is being said here? Yeah, we're going to do the wall later. We didn't get it this time, but the Democrats have agreed to even stronger border enforcement. They have agreed to more money for border enforcement. They have agreed to more bigger presence of the Border Patrol and ICE. And so when it comes to actually stopping illegals from entering the country, we're already showing a dramatic change without even doing the wall yet. That doesn't fly with you, Mutt? Doesn't count for
Sure, yeah, sure it does. But the point is that, you know, when he said that he was going to put that in, the wall was going to be part of this process, immediately Schumer said that's a non-starter. So everybody said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll pull it out." I mean, you've got to draw the line. It was once and for all. I mean, if they can't take charge now, I mean, they've got the House, they got the Senate, they got the presidency. What the hell are they going to do? I mean, they'll never take charge. I mean, the Democrats just continue to get whatever they want anytime they want it. That is very frustrating.
I was just going to say, Paul, you sound very frustrated out there. I've run out of time here for this segment. The Washington Post did a story on this. Snerdley brought it to my attention. And the actual first two words of the story, Rush Limbaugh and his listeners were not happy with reports this week, and they quoted accurately 3 callers here. You now would constitute the 4th that actually got through. We got to take a break. Back in a moment. Fastest 3 hours in media fast this week. I can't believe it's already Thursday. I don't know where the time is going, but we make the most of it, folks. More said in 10 seconds on this program than most hosts will say in an hour. We have to take a brief time out here at the top. We will continue right after this. All right, we're going to get on to taxes here, and I got some people on the phones. They want to weigh. They got comments here on the wall of what Trump is up to. We even have one of the farmers who sat down and talked with Trump earlier this week is on the phone. Wants to report on that. So if you're on hold, if you're on the phone and on hold, please hang on. We're going to get to you El Quico today. Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882. The email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, so Trump and his team announced the big tax reform package yesterday. And the tax reform package is massive. It reduces 7 tax brackets to 3. It takes a top marginal rate from 39 down to 33%. 10%, 25, and I think 33 are the brackets. It does away with the all deductions except home mortgage interest, and the charitable deduction. It gets rid of the death tax. There's something else that it gets rid of today that I didn't know yesterday, and it's somewhere here in my stack. I'll mention it when I come across it. That's good. Oh, alternative minimum tax is gone. Do you realize how huge that is? The alternative minimum tax was created way back when because there were some really, really rich people who weren't paying anything in taxes. They weren't cheating. They were just using existing tax law. They were not using loopholes. There aren't any loopholes. The tax law is what it is. And, of course, when the news hit that some gazillionaire wasn't paying anything in taxes, there was shock and outrage and anger all over the place. And so Congress dutifully went into gear and created the alternative minimum tax, which is a tax that was originally supposed to apply only to the very rich. And it was to ensure that everybody paid something regardless what the calculation of their tax was. Well, the alternative minimum tax has now started capturing many more people than it was ever intended. And when this began to happen, there were red flags raised, and Congress dutifully said, we're going to get rid of it. It's now gone way beyond what was intended. But then Congress never did get rid of it. You know why? Because it was bringing in all kinds of revenue that was never projected to bring in. So it was all considered gravy. It was a bonus. To the point now that the alternative minimum tax snags a lot of people in the 300 to 500,000, 300,000, 500,000 adjusted gross income bracket, and is adding to their tax burden. It's being applied to people who are also paying taxes. Remember, it was originally to apply only to those who weren't paying anything. And they were not cheating. That's another thing. If you were able to invest and use all existing tax law to whittle your taxable income down to zero and the amount of tax you owed to zero, well, then you were legal. It was deemed immoral. It was deemed unfair. So the ATM comes in to snare those people. Now it's snaring people that have no business, and it's being snared by it's adding to their tax burden. It's really punitive. It's one of the most egregious, outrageous aspects, and it's gone under Trump tax reform. All deductions gone except charitable donations and interest on home mortgages. And Sturdley says, well, is it a good thing, all the deductions? There aren't that many left anyway. I mean, it's not as though they're whacking a whole bunch of them. You know, people, the tax code's a strange thing, and people's opinions about the tax code's a strange thing. I would dare say that a lot of people, I don't know if it's a majority, but a lot of people just believe that the rich are able to finagle every year not paying any income tax, and that they're using loopholes, and they're using the power of their wealth to hire powerful tax attorneys and accountants who are able to bludgeon tax authorities into submission and just giving up. But whatever, they don't think it's legit. They think the rich are getting away with something that they're not. the fact is that most, when the top marginal tax rate, back to 1981 for a moment, when the top marginal tax rate was 70% back in 1981, there were massive deductions and tax shelters that were part of the tax code. Remember, the reason I say that we're never going to get a flat tax and we're never going to get true simplification is too much power here. It's just way too much power. Congress is not going to give up this kind of power. The social architecture alone. I mean, let's say you have a constituent who's a big donor who happens to be in the bearskin rug business. You can write a tax provision that makes the purchase of bearskin rugs tax deductible, as long as you get other people in Congress to go along with it. And they will have similar deals, and you all scratch each other's back. So oddball, strange, weird deductions and shelters existed. Presidents don't veto it because the bill ends up being thousands of pages, and you have to take it because what the president wants is also in there. Tax rate reductions or tax increases, depending on who the president is. There were all kinds of things like that, and I don't know that there was a bearskin rug deduction. I'm just giving you an example. It was that crazy. Well, with the Tax Reform Act of 1986, a whole slew of these things went away. And the trade-off was, we're taking everybody down to 3 tax rates here. Actually, it was 2. There was some people paid a 31% rate based on some odd calculations, but it was 10 and 28 or 15 and 28%, and they broomed most of the deductions. Well, now we're back up to 7 brackets, but those deductions that were eliminated have not been reinstated. I want to call your attention to Trump's tax return that was made. Remember Rachel Maddow breathlessly promoting all night that she had Trump's tax returns? And the leftists, their tongues were on the floor. They thought they had Trump nailed. They thought they were going to prove that Trump's got business deals with the Russians and the Chicons that would disqualify him. That's why they want his tax returns. So what was the tax year? Was it 85? I forget what it was, but Trump paid way, way more than any president ever has, not only in real terms, but in terms of percentage. Trump paid something like $38 million in taxes on an income. I forget what the income was, $150 million, paid $38 million, maybe $125 million. Nobody pays $38 million. I mean, well, that's wrong. People, that's my point. People now do. The deductions are gone. There's no way around it. These loopholes and so forth, I mean, they just don't exist, not nearly to the extent that they did. Where do you think all this revenue that Obama collected the last 8 years is coming from? When nearly 40% of all income tax revenue is paid by 1% of the population, you really think there are a lot of deductions out there that they're using? 1% of the population paying 40% of the entire take? So it's not nearly the tax code that it used to be in terms fraught with multiple opportunity for shelters and deductions. There are some. The trick is to whittle your income, your adjusted gross income down. And this is one of the things that some people understand. When you have, it's a difference between earned income and capital gains. Somebody retired who is worth $2 billion. There's income on that $2 billion. If you can get most of it cast as capital gains, you're paying 15% on it. But you're not paying on your wealth every year. We don't have a wealth tax yet. We just have an income tax. The trick for these guys is to whittle their taxable income down as low as possible. And that's where most of the I call them tricks. That's where most of the opportunities are. If you have a tax lawyer who really knows that code, and it's a massive tax code, it's multiple volumes. But there's really no way of getting out of paying the percentage you owe based on your income. The trick is whittling your income down. That's why carried interest is the rate that hedge fund people pay. That's 15%. Well, hedge funders, as far as most people think, are all multiple billionaires, or at least billionaires. And they've got this special deal, carried interest, where they don't pay 39% on what they earn. They pay 15% on some of it, on a percentage of it. Trump even railed against it during the campaign, saying he was going to get rid of this carried interest business because he said the hedge fund guys are getting away with bloody murder. And it was just a way to whittle down the taxable income, because that's probably the most effective way of paying as little as you can. However, if you're employed and you get W-2s, there's no way that you can whittle away your income. There's no way you can change what it is. It is what it is by virtue of what your employer pays you. But people that are self-employed or retired, like the John Edwards trick. It's not a trick. It was hypocritical. Remember John Edwards? There are two Americas. There's a poor America and the rich America, and I am for the poor America. He ran for office on this whole concept of two Americas, and he was the guy who understood how bad it was for poor people in America. It's not fair. It's not right. Well, then he had to release his tax returns and found out the guy was doing everything he could to avoid paying Medicare taxes. Here's how you do it. The first thing you do, well, let me explain the rates first. You have your income tax rate, whatever it is, based on your income. Then you have your standard deduction, whatever you get to lop off of that. Then you have the payroll taxes, which 12% up to a ceiling of, up to a floor of $135,000. So basically you're paying 12% in addition to your income tax rate. Now, Medicare was added to this only recently, I said 10 years ago. And the Medicare rate, not part of the FICA, not part of the payroll tax. The Medicare, don't know what the exact rate is now, but it's another 4%. Well, if you want to organize yourself, as Edwards did, and a lot of people do, as a subchapter S, what you end up doing, you create a corporation that is you. Mom and pop operation. Many subchapter S's are small business that file their taxes on a personal return every year. And what you get to do, you get to pay yourself a salary. Let's say you're subchapter S. You're an independent contractor. You're a painter. You're a poet. You're a songwriter, whatever. And your income for the year, just going to make up a number for the ease of understanding. Your income for the year is $100,000. But you don't pay yourself that. You pay yourself a salary of, say, $25,000. That's what you would pay income tax on. And that's what you would pay your Medicare tax on. Now, depending on what you do with the balance, you're not paying the rate on the full $100,000. You're going to pay a tax rate on the full $100,000. But only paying yourself a portion of what you earn. It's an accounting nightmare. You've got to be able to do the accounting or have an accountant do this for you, because you have to issue yourself W-2s and all this. But the gross of what you're paid comes in. But in terms of salary, for tax purposes, you don't pay yourself that. You pay yourself 50, 40, whatever your accountant advises. And in that way, you avoid primarily paying all of the Medicare tax. Now, Trump, obviously, there was no way Trump was a sub-S on that tax return, but no way he would have paid $38,000. He was filing taxes. Here's straight earnings. Here are my deductions. Here's what I owe. end up paying $38 million on an income of $120, $125. He wasn't playing any games whatsoever. That could be any number of reasons for that. I know all kinds of people that pay more than they owe. They don't want to be targeted. If they are targeted, they want to be able to demonstrate, hey, if anything happens, you owe me. I don't owe you. I've been overpaying. That's how afraid a lot of people are of the IRS. I mean, for every taxpayer, particularly every independent contractor, there are different strategies and different ways of doing all this. But you cannot file sub-S if you're an employee somewhere. That becomes your status. You have to be a small business owner or an independent contractor. As such, the IRS has a list of 10 qualifications that you have to be able to prove you meet in order to qualify as an independent contractor. When you are an independent contractor, you get paid the gross. Nobody withholds anything when they pay you. And then you have to file quarterly estimates you have to get real close so people overpay on the estimates. And then once you establish a quarterly estimate for a year, the IRS expects that that's what's going to be. You have to at least pay 90% of that the next year, whether you earn more or less. But the least flexibility is for people that are W-4, W-2 employees. If you're 1099, if you're an independent contractor, that's where the flexibility exists. And I've always thought the fastest way for tax reform, you want to really have it happen next year, eliminate withholding and make every taxpayer actually write the check monthly, quarterly, weekly, whatever, to the IRS. Actually pay their taxes like they pay for anything else. And that way people, because most people never see. They see the net, they never see the gross, they never see the money that ends up in Washington and their state capital as taxes. If they were paid the gross and had to write those checks, you would see tax reform and it would have happened yesterday. So an email, Rush, what happens to the other $75,000 if you only pay yourself $25,000? You pay yourself that as a bonus. It's not income. Everything's about income when it comes to taxes. Everything has a different rate. Capital gains is a different rate than ordinary income. Earned income is different from ordinary income as well. It's a complicated maze to figure all this out. But there are a lot of reasons for doing sub-S. I mean, there's security reasons, there are privacy reasons. You can name your company whatever you want it to be. It's not you. There is a benefit to being able to file a small business on a personal return, which is what a subchapter S allows you to do. And Trump referenced this, by the way, as people did yesterday in the tax reform, as having great benefit to small business mom and pop operators who file a sub-S. But the reason that if you gross $100,000, you're an independent contractor, you gross $100,000, but you only pay yourself, you elect whatever you want to pay yourself. Your tax accountant will advise you, or you will do it yourself based on your knowledge. You pay yourself $25,000 or $30,000 a year, and it's on that you pay income tax and your Medicare and your payroll tax. And then the other $75,000 is a bonus, or whatever you want to call it. You pay taxes on it. It just is at different rates. One of the primary objectives now, and everybody has a different reason, and I know that many tax accountants out there are probably picking holes in things I'm saying. For you tax accountants, I'm trying to be as generic here as I can. But in the case of John Edwards, where he was caught up with hypocrisy was he had arranged himself as a sub-S, which is nothing illegal about it. Everything about it was perfectly fine. He just didn't want to pay the full 4% Medicare tax. He wanted the government to get as little of his money as he could. The hypocrisy was he's a Democrat out there telling everybody they weren't paying enough, and the rich aren't paying their fair share. Well, he's a rich guy, and people got a hold of his tax returns and found out he was doing what everybody else does, trying to pay as little as possible. So he was a gigantic hypocrite. He wasn't breaking the law, but he wasn't behaving to type. He got caught up in it, and that began his problems, by the way. Okay, let's head back to the phones. This is John in Floral City, Florida. Where's Floral City, John?
It's about 60 miles north of Tampa and about 20 miles from the Citrus Bristol River.
No, right where it is. Great. Thank you very much for calling.
I must say, you are a breath of fresh air and truth and a vast array of knowledge. I believe that people shouldn't really worry about Trump with the wall right now because I think he's just using it as a bargaining chip, a ploy, whereas he throws it into the budget. If they say okay, hey, great. If they say no, he didn't lose anything because he has other ways of getting it. But this way, if they ever come back and say, hey, look, we want this, you say, hey, wait a minute. I gave up this. You want that? We're going to go back, and I'm going to have the wall.
Well, I understand that. There are going to be all kinds of people, Trump supporters, who will try to explain this in the most satisfactory way to them, such as you're doing. Hey, you know what? He's up against a lot there. This is just a chip thrown down. This is by no means the end of this process. Trump says we're going to get the wall. We're going to get the wall. I have total trust and faith. Oh, by the way, Trump taxes, I was taught, 2005, $150 million adjustable gross income, paid $38 million in taxes. That's way above. I mean, the average for people in his bracket, best I can tell, the average effective, and this is the effective tax rate is a much different tax rate than what your bracket is. The effective tax rate is a whole different calculation based on your entire return. And I'm not even going to try to explain it. But the bottom line is that Obama, every year's effective tax rate is anywhere from 19% to 24%. Trump's in 2005 was way beyond that. Way beyond. I mean, Trump paid so much in taxes that not only was MSNBC shattered and shocked, other people couldn't believe it because he paid far more than appeared to be necessary. But if you just go by the published rates, he was right in line. So it created a lot of curiosity. Now back to Trump at the wall here. I think there is validity to John's point here is that this just could be a chip laid down for use later on. The one thing I think it's important to remember in all of this is and none of this has changed. We have to remember how the entire Washington establishment is arrayed against Donald Trump. And this includes members of his own party. Not all of them, of course, but there are many in the Republican Party who do not. Let's put it this way. There are a lot of people waiting for President Pence. There are a lot of people who do not want Trump to succeed. I've been through the reasons. And it doesn't matter that he's right or wrong on his ideas. It doesn't matter. Trump could have the best tax reform plan that there's ever been. Trump could have the best immigration. In fact, I'll go so far as to say this. The more ingenious, the more effective, the more brilliant Trump's ideas are, the greater the opposition to them he's going to face. For all of the previously stated reasons. The Washington establishment is a closed club. It's made up of robotically similar people. They have structured their existence in terms of marketing and branding as to be so special and so unique that only they are qualified to be in the establishment. Only they are qualified to have such power in our country. Only they have any business being in charge of all of these matters and affairs of state. Well, by virtue of that, an outsider is not welcome. An outsider must be sent packing. An outsider cannot succeed. An outsider, particularly an outsider like this one, a loud, bombastic, braggadocious, and in some might say a put-down artist. We can't allow some buffoon like this to come in here and succeed, because what will that say? It will display, it will illustrate that there's nothing special about us. It will illustrate that there's nothing unique about us. It will illustrate that we are not who and what we say we are. And so for those reasons alone, Donald Trump mustn't be stopped. And Donald Trump must certainly never be supported. Now, there will be things like a Judge Gorsuch, where the fact that Trump's an outsider nominated, that'll be set aside because of the importance of somebody like Gorsuch, because of the importance of the Supreme Court. But when it comes to comprehensive immigration reform, you've got to remember where the Washington establishment is. And the Washington establishment is right where people who pay for it are, the lobbyists and the donors. And they do not want a wall, and they do not want an interruption in the ongoing flow of illegal immigration. We're the Chamber of Commerce, various other Republican donors, liberal Democrats who want this influx of people because they need the voter registration that they pretend. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but the last thing they want is for some, in their view, unskilled, untrained, unprofessional, reckless ne'er-do-well bringing in this bunch of people he's got, like this ruffian Bannon, and some of these young whippersnappers that don't know what they're doing. Good God, the establishment say, we can't allow this to succeed. What's it going to say about us? My point is, you always have to keep in mind what Trump is up against. And he knows it. I'm not trying to make anybody feel sorry for him. You never forget what he's up against. And he knows it. So in the case of this wall business, the only thing about it that bothers me, folks, is the government shutdown aspect. That's what I want to see. I want the Democrats shut down once and for all on this. I want them eating this. And I want all kinds of horrible tasting stuff on it when they swallow it. I want this government shutdown stuff rammed in every orifice of theirs, whether you can see it or not. And I want them to eat it, and I want them to chew it, and I want them to swallow it, and I don't want them to ever regurgitate it. I'm so sick and tired of this. It's one of the biggest lies. It is one of the biggest misrepresentations. It is one of the phoniest, baloniest, plastic, but at a good time rock and roller tricks that the Republicans have ever fallen for. This government shutdown garbage. There is not a government shutdown. The government never totally shuts down. If it did, nobody would notice unless the media was out there whining and moaning about it. And it bugs me that people continue to cave for it. But the reason the Republicans cave is because they don't want the government shut down either. The government is the establishment. The establishment is the government. You're asking them to shut themselves down. The Republicans know their role here. They get to stay in the establishment if they're the ones that eat it every day. Doesn't matter who wins elections, you can see. That's what bugs me. The clean out the swamp thing is what I was waiting for Trump to do. And part of cleaning out the swamp is getting rid of this tactic, one of many, government shutdown. And what I don't like about this is that we are delaying anything, wall, whatever it is, supposedly because of the fear that the Democrats will shut down the government and we will get blamed for it. If they're going to shut it down, let's find a way to blame them for it. Let's stop acting scared and fraidy cat stuff. I just worn out with that. When it comes to the wall, I've never been sure that he's actually going to build one. I've actually, a couple times during this program, I said, I think the wall is symbolic, and I had all kinds of Trumpists emailing me, telling me I didn't know what I was talking about, that I was wrong. He's going to build a wall. He's a construction expert. He's going to build it. It's going to be prettier. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be the best wall it's ever been. And it doesn't help us for you out there talking about there isn't going to be a wall. Well, I've never been convinced there was going to be a wall. If there is, fine. I'm all excited for it. Bring a wall on. Bring the wall on. make it a tourist attraction. I have no doubt that Trump wants to get it done. I have no doubt that he will at some point. You got to keep in mind what Trump is up against here. I'll tell you this. This is a new little bit of information that I have become aware of. And that is that there are many in the Senate and many in the House, both parties, who are privately laughing themselves silly at the prospect that Trump's going to get his wall. There's not going to be a wall, they're saying. They're laughing. They're just having the best time watching Trump talk about this, and they know there's going to never be a wall because they're never going to vote for it. They don't want a wall. They don't want such a visible limitation on illegal immigration. And they're just having the greatest time watching all this, chuckling and laughing. There's never going to be a wall, and they're just enjoying Trump flail and talk about it and promise it. And they're openly telling each other, it's a pipe dream. We're never voting for that. That could be what's really going on here. There's a lot going on. The point is, the opposition to Trump is just as pointed, intense, and severe as it's ever been. And the closer he gets to actually accomplishing things, folks, the greater the resistance will become. Can't afford for this guy to end up running rings around these professionals, these elites. Cannot have that. The saving grace is that he knows what he's up against. Let's take a brief time out and get back to your phones after this. Now, look at this. I got a couple stories here from CBS News. The headline is all I care about for this story. More Americans think Trump will increase their taxes rather than decrease them. This is it's a poll. What's the polls at CBS? I don't know. Probably is a CBS poll. Says their report. Now, why would, after the way this is presented, how in the world can anybody think that? How can anybody think that Trump's massive tax cut proposal is going to increase their taxes? Who in the world thinks this, and why? Pondered as we head back to the phones. This is Hank in Jackson, Michigan. Hank, it says here that you were one of the farmers that sat down and had a conversation with Trump this past Tuesday at the where was the meeting? Was it the White House?
At the White House. Megadittos, Mr. Trump. This is a week that I will never forget, speaking with the president on Tuesday and then having the honor to share that conversation with Mr. Limbaugh on Thursday. I don't see how I can top that unless my granddaughter, born in August, on my birthday. So thank you very much for taking my call, sir.
I am very flattered. Thank you, sir, very much. So what's up?
I was on the road, and I was listening to your show, and there was talk in regard to NAFTA earlier and so forth, and I had to call in regard to the position on trade conversation that we had with Mr. Trump.
How many of you were in the group? How many in the group, Hank?
There were 14 of us from across the United States.
And where in the White House did you meet?
We met in the West Wing, in the Roosevelt Room.
All right, cool. Very, very cool. So what did you gather? What did you take away from this meeting?
What I took away from the meeting is that the image that mainstream media and others are trying to portray of Mr. Trump, in particular in regard to rural America and agriculture, that he does not care anything about that, that is just totally opposite. He shared with us many things that reinforced my belief that not only does he care for rural America, but he wants to strengthen agriculture in America, which will further strengthen and make America great again.
Did you get the impression that he was informed and up to speed and able to converse with you in ways you understood and respected?
The fact that we were from agriculture and he is a realtor, I was completely astonished in regard to his understanding on the issues that we chose to speak with him on. And one of the things that I had asked of me the last night and prior to the meeting is how good of a listener is he? And I replied in this way. The way that you determine whether someone is really listening to you is their substance to the reply on the issue or the question that is presented. And he hit it dead on in regard to any issue or any question that was asked of him. What I did see from him is he has the ability to take and process very quickly. When he responds, he does not hesitate at all. It is rapid fire right back to you, but it is directly to the question that you pose to him.
You walked out of there thinking the meeting was substantive and serious and not just something he did for show purposes.
Exactly. Matter of fact, I've kind of described the meeting as it was a good meeting. No, it was a great meeting, and even greater yet, I believe that it is going to be a productive meeting for American agriculture.
Everybody that's met with Trump has had your reaction, be it CEOs, be it doctors, nurses, whoever has come out of meetings with him has said pretty much what you're saying. Not everybody's acknowledged the listening aspect of it. To be honest, I've had some people tell me, not in meetings like yours, just over the years, that when they're talking to Trump, some of them feel like he's not really listening. He's focused on what he's going to say next. I've had people say that, but others have said what you did about this. How did you end up being invited? We've got about 45 seconds. How did you end up being invited, Hank?
Oh, that is a long process. I'm very active in the ag industry as a dairy farmer within the state, nationally as well. And I'm also active in the Michigan Republican Party, and I have to believe that between those two things there is probably why I was asked to be part of it. When I asked the person, they said, you had most of the boxes checked on what we were looking for. So,
well, congratulations. Did you get to see any of the White House or just the West Wing and the Roosevelt Room?
I only saw the West Wing, but the gentleman that contacted me and that the research on me invited me over and gave me a thorough
there you go.
Eisenhower
Congratulations. I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but congratulations. It sounds like you had a great day. There's been movement on Obamacare. The Freedom Caucus, the conservative group in the House, says that they are getting closer, being able to support this. So we'll delve into that, too, in our final remaining hour. Yeah. I just had to check something here. We're ready to go, my friends. Great to have you back. As always, you can depend on it. Rush Limbaugh meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. So great to have you with us. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. The email address, lrushvo@eibnet.us. Okay, CBS News. More Americans think that Donald Trump will increase their taxes rather than decrease them, though it is Democrats most likely to say this. Well, then what? More Americans than most likely Democrats to say it. This is a testament. This is an absolute testament to the fact that we have a dishonest, lying media out there. How in the world do you ever, with a tax cut plan, how do you end up believing your taxes are going up? 53% of Americans want Trump and Congress to move on to other issues rather than try to pass another health care bill. That's another. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to conflate the two. Two separate things here. More Americans think that Trump's tax cut is going to raise their taxes. And very conveniently now, 53% of Americans want Trump and Congress to move on to other issues rather than reform health care bill because they like Obamacare. Now, we had this news yesterday. More and more Americans are really liking Obamacare. They don't want anybody touching it now. While just 12% of Americans think that Affordable Care Act is working, 61% say it needs changes rather than complete repeal. Only 24% of Americans think Obamacare needs to be completely replaced. Now, nothing, I mean nothing, has polled worse than Obamacare over the last 8 years. There has not been any deviation in that. The last 8 years, Obamacare has polled horribly. It is why Trump was running around claiming that he was going to repeal it and replace it. It is why Hillary Clinton was not spending very much time defending it. There wasn't any sentiment for keeping it. There has never been a majority of Americans. Do you understand it? Never have there been a majority of Americans in support of it who say they liked it, or we've never had a majority. It has never polled well. And now, out of the blue, and all of a sudden, most Americans don't want it touched. The only people who do not think Obamacare is a disaster are people who are getting their coverage for free and who've never actually tried to use it. If they had tried to use Obamacare, they would know what the high deductibles are, and they would know about the high copays, and they would know that it is not working. So that's what CBS has entered into the public fray today. This is from the Associated Press. Trump tax plan could be good news for many, but bad for the deficit. Can I ask a question? I'm serious. Do any of you remember anybody, including Republicans, but anybody in the last 8 years being concerned about the deficit in relationship to any Obama proposal? I don't. I don't remember the media having any concern about debt. I don't remember them having any concern about deficits or the national debt. I don't remember, particularly when Obama's stimulus was being crafted, I don't remember anybody in the media worrying about whether we can afford it or not. I don't remember anybody worrying about the deficit impact on by Obamacare. They might have talked about it, and they might have spread the bilge and drivel that, like Obama was saying, it was going to reduce the deficit. But there wasn't. What the media does is they throw the deficit up as a reason to oppose anything the Republicans come up with. The AP, in talking about Trump's tax cut, writes this: the president's proposal marks a rehash of an economic theory popularized in the 1980s. Trump officials essentially argue that benefits from the tax cuts will trickle down from higher profits for companies into stronger pay raises for workers and greater consumer spending. Some economists agree, but most budget experts say it's unlikely. I called this one, predicted this. Major monologue yesterday explaining supply side, explaining the media was going to do just this because they've spent so many years mischaracterizing the tax cuts from the Reagan years. Another example of what Trump is up against. Let's go to the audio sound bites just to illustrate that there's a knee-jerk reaction here. Whenever any Republican, I don't care who it is, proposes a tax cut, it's immediately characterized as a tax cut for the rich. It is supply side trickle down, and it never works. And it's the rich stealing money from the poor. Our example from the Today Show today. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin was on there with the co-host Savannah Guthrie, who said Donald Trump was on this show telling our viewers a year ago that he believed in raising taxes on the wealthy, including himself. Now, would you acknowledge, Mr. Secretary, that the reform plan you've laid out does the exact opposite? In fact, it is a dramatic tax cut for the wealthy?
No, this isn't about a dramatic cut in taxes for the wealthy. This is about lowering tax rates in return for getting rid of massive amounts of deductions and special interests.
But it does cut
and creating
taxes for
economic
the wealthy,
growth. Right? Again, when we lay out the exact details of the plan, what you'll see is this is about reducing taxes and tax simplification. This is about a middle-income tax cut. This is about having sweeping tax cuts, the largest tax cuts in history, the largest tax reform program in history, to create American jobs. This is all about jobs, jobs, jobs.
All right, now, kudos. I mean, that's one way of going about this, and I appreciate the characterization. He's trying to make this understandable to the most people. What this is about is economic growth. What this is about is creating jobs. And he did a good job, but there was just one thing he missed. And I spent, actually it was 24 hours ago, the monologue in this hour was an explanation of the so-called supply-side taxes lowering rates to raise revenue, and how the Democrats don't care about that. The Democrats are not interested in more money being generated for the government. And I can't tell you how many people have asked me why. And the answer is because this is not about raising revenue to them. This is not about funding the government. This is about class envy and warfare. This is all politics. And Savannah Guthrie, God bless her, she behaved true to form here. Mnuchin, no, this isn't about a dramatic cut in taxes for the wealthy. This is about lowering tax rates in return for getting rid of massive amounts of deductions and special interest. Guthrie, but it does cut taxes for the wealthy, right? No, it doesn't. It cuts tax rates. I hope the Trump team learns this distinction because it's crucial. Tax rates are being cut. Taxes are not. The government is going to collect more revenue than they think. In fact, the Trump team gets it. They're saying it's going to pay for itself. Well, how does it do that? It pays for itself by generating new revenue. Lowering tax rates creates more money to Washington. Another way to express this, the top 1%, the wealthy in Savannah Guthrie's world, in anybody's world, the top 1% are paying nearly 40% of all taxes. How is it that they are paying less? How is it that they're getting a tax cut? They're not getting a tax cut. They're paying more. But, Rush, why would they agree to pay more? Folks, it's real simple. I don't mean to sound condescending. Let's say, let's construct an average person. Let's say it's you. And let's pick a magic number that's easy to make calculations with. Let's say you earn $100,000 a year. And right now, your combined rate is 39% federal. Let's say you live in a state where the rate is 5 or 6. So now you're up to 44. And now let's add your Medicare to this and your FICA. So you're well over 50% now, depending on the state you live in, unless you live in a state where there is no income tax, which, as an aside, many Americans aren't doing. They're leaving the Northeast and moving to a place like Texas, Florida, Kentucky, no income tax. Now, when you're paying, let's say, 50%, when everything's added up, you're paying 50%, you're going to be very interested in finding a way to lower the amount of money you're paying taxes on. You're going to be very interested in finding ways to limit what you have to pay. You might even go out and pay an accountant to find ways to limit. You can't lower your rate. The rate is the law. What you can do is try to lower your income that is taxed, your reported income, your adjustable gross income, your taxable income. Well, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of effort, but you're willing to do it because you're facing an exorbitant rate. Now somebody comes along and says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to cut your tax rate from 39 to 33. Now you're paying under 50. It may well be, and this is the point of the whole discussion, it may well be that when the rate comes down, it reaches a point where you're okay with paying it because it's not oppressive, or you're more okay with paying it. Capital gains is a good example. If the capital gains rate's 35%, it's not, but it used to. If the capital gains rate's 35%, you're going to hold on to your stocks. The stocks that appreciate in value, you're not going to want to sell them. You're not going to want to pay 35% on them. You'll just keep rolling them over, and you'll have your paper gains, but you're not going to sell them because you don't want to report the. Now they lower the capital gains rate to 15. What are you going to do? You are going to go to town, and you're going to be perfectly fine selling your stocks. You're going to be perfectly fine taking the profit, perfectly fine taking the money, because you're only paying 15%. Tax rates being lowered do many things. It results in more people being hired, therefore more people paying taxes, therefore tax revenue increases. Tax rates being lowered often facilitates existing taxpayers being much more compliant with the code and paying it because it's far less punitive. So lowering rates is always, with certain tax, it's always going to generate more revenue. I don't know how else to express this. The top 1% are paying 40%. How many people are we talking about here? They're paying almost half of the entire tax revenue of this country. How can anybody honestly say those people are getting a tax cut? They are not. And they haven't been. With Obama, there hadn't been any tax relief whatsoever, any way, shape, manner, form. With Bush, there was. What this is a tax rate reduction. It is not a tax cut in the strict sense of the revenue raised and where it goes. Washington is going to get more revenue. But the Democrats, no. They want to talk about how the rich are getting an unfair break here. They want to talk about how the rich are not paying their fair share. They want to talk, just like Savannah Guthrie is doing here. Aren't the rich getting a tax cut? The rich are getting, it's not fair. It's not fair. They're not getting a tax cut. They're not going to be paying less when all is said and done. Now, at some point they might. There's another factor. When your income tax, you know how some people actually do not want, this is a tough thing because very few refuse a raise, but there are a lot of people who don't want to be elevated to a new tax bracket. So this eliminates that too. The mechanism is here for people to be more forthcoming and forthwith in reporting their actual income rather than sheltering it, hiding it, putting in deductions, whatever's left that they can do. It's a win-win all the way around. Plus, there's the moral component. just how much does government need? Just how much of what your sweat and labor produces are they entitled to? And have we not reached that limit? I don't care how you slice this. There is no justification for opposing an across-the-board tax cut like this. The problem is not enough revenue in Washington. There's plenty of revenue. They're collecting record amounts of revenue. The problem is there's no discipline on the spending side. They will not spend a dime less this year than they spent last year, and it goes on that way with every year. The problem is not enough money. The problem is not that there aren't people paying their fair share of taxes. The problem is no discipline, no spending control whatsoever in Washington. And they always want to blame this on the taxpayer. And they always want to blame it on the rich. And they always want to blame it on greedy people who want to keep more of what they earn. The greed in this entire discussion is in government. The greed is in Washington, D.C. The greed is in your state capitals. The greed is in government. But yet most people fall for this notion. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to pay less than my share. Well, the moral equivalent, the moral component here is striking to me. Most people are already overtaxed. The way Washington looks at it, it's not your money anyway. When they start talking about, well, we're going to give people a tax cut, we've got to find a way to pay for it. Well, you got to find a way to pay for it. What about doing with less, like everybody else has to do now and then? Oh, no, we can't do that. We're government. Too many services, too much necessary here. We can't do it. Excuse me? I'd like to be able to try that one year. Anyway, quick timeout, my friends. Hang in there. We're coming right back. Don't go away. Here is Sharon from Eastern Washington as we head back to the phones. Welcome to the one and only EIB Network. How are you doing, Sharon?
Very good. Thank you, sir. I have a couple questions. First of all, I understand, according to the Drudge Report, that the Portland, Oregon Rose Parade is being canceled this year because some supremacist groups are going to have threatened to interfere with the parade and protest any Republican Party participation in the parade.
Yeah, I saw that. It's because Republicans are not tolerant of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender stuff like that.
How can we stop this sort of thing? I'm sorry, that infringes on my rights as well as everybody else.
Yeah, the age-old question. How can we? I mean, it's tough to stop people that are being paid, that are being bussed in, that are having their signs made for them. It's been admitted to today in the Washington Post. It's tough to stop.
How do we, as other people against them, how do we make it known that we don't like this?
Go ahead and have the parade, and when they show up, beat the hell out of them.
I'd love to. My second question.
Now, everybody, wait. Everybody in there shaking. Rush, you can't say that. You can't say that. You're going to have people do it, and you're going to get blamed for it. I was, of course, speaking generically. But
I know.
Isn't that what you wanted? How else are you going to stop this stuff?
I don't know.
I mean, if you cede the playing field to them, if you let them have it, what are they going to do? They're going to own it. They're going to keep it. What's your second question? I don't mean to take away from you.
I would like to know who paid for the expenses Obama incurred when he was out campaigning for Hillary Clinton last fall. Did the taxpayers pay for that?
Theoretically, the Hillary campaign paid for it.
Come on.
No. Theoretically, according to law, a Hillary campaign would have to pay for Obama's travel. I think he's exempted from it because he's president. Security requirements are that he take Air Force One. She probably... the first class airfare, if there's any payment at all. But no, when the president travels around, it's pretty much taxpayers that footing it.
That's not right. I'm sorry. Hillary's campaign should pay for the whole darn thing.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Clintons. They don't pay for anything. Not even their own Band-Aids. I got a startling piece of information this morning. Speaking of protesters and so forth, try this story. This is from the UK Telegraph. Students who avoid making eye contact could be guilty of racism, Oxford University says. Wait, aren't we taught not to make eye contact? Your first trip to New York, don't they tell you to don't make eye contact and don't look up at the buildings, right? Don't do it because you're immediately denoting yourself as a tourist. If you make contact with the wrong people in the wrong place, and your racism is the worst of your problems. And if you start looking up at the buildings, whoa, Mabel, look at that. You're not going to find your wallet in about 10 seconds. Maybe 5. It just depends. Students who avoid making eye contact with their peers could be guilty of racism, according to Oxford University's latest guidance. The university's Equality and Diversity Unit has advised students that, quote, not speaking directly to people could be deemed a racial microaggression, which can lead to mental ill health. Mental ill health, all by not speaking directly to somebody. It's a racial microaggression. Other examples of everyday racism include asking someone where they are originally from, particularly if they are a person of color. Hey, where are you originally from? You racist pig! Can't you tell? No, I'm just curious. Where are you from? I don't have to answer that. This is a microaggression. Oxford's Equality and Diversity Unit explains in its Trinity Term newsletter that some people who do these things may be entirely well-meaning and would be mortified to realize that they had caused offense. But this is of little consequence if a possible effect of their words or actions is to suggest to people that they may fulfill a negative stereotype or do not belong. Universities have been accused of pandering to the snowflake generation of students who are seen as oversensitive and quick to take offense. Dr. Joanna Williams, a lecturer in higher education at the University of Kent, said that the guidance was completely ridiculous. It'll make students hypersensitive about how they interact with each other. She said, essentially, people are being accused of a thought crime. Exactly right. That's exactly what is going on. You know what this is designed to make normal people cower from making any expression of dislike. That's what all this is. This is censorship. This is fear and intimidation. This is to get you. You think you're normal and everything's fine. You're not supposed to say or look at or do anything like that you do marks you as a racist and a discriminator. Now you can't even lower your eyes and walk away without being considered a deplorable. And this is at Oxford. This is the highest of higher education. Ajit Pai is the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. He is a wonderful man, very, very smart, and is prepared now to roll back elements of Title II of the Communication Law, which is popularly known as net neutrality. Net neutrality is a total creation of left-wing politics, and it has many lies, many fraudulent notions about it, such as the Internet will only be free and open when government is regulating it. There will never be full free speech on the Internet unless government is regulating it. Government must regulate content so that nobody has an advantage based on money. This is nothing more than a prescription for the liberal takeover of the Internet, and like everything else, they call it something the exact opposite of what it is, net neutrality. So Ajit Pai showed up at the museum in Washington yesterday because he's about ready to start moving on this, and you have a couple of sound bites here of him explaining this.
Throughout the discussion that is to come, you will hear from the other side that Title II is the only way to preserve a free and open Internet. Let me be clear. This is a lie. For decades before 2015, we had a free and open Internet. Indeed, the free and open internet developed and flourished under light touch regulation. We weren't living in some digital dystopia before the partisan imposition of a massive plan hatched in Washington saved all of us from ourselves. The next argument you're going to hear is that Title II is necessary to protect free speech. That's right. Some will argue that government control is the key to your ability to express yourself on the internet.
Exactly as I said. Now, we've talked to Commissioner Pai for the Limbaugh letter a couple of times, and I read my tech blogs frequently, and he's hated. These millennial tech bloggers despise this guy, and they write insulting, demeaning things about how he's an idiot, he's a sop to the telecom industry, he used to work for Verizon or somebody who they hate, and they really believe that net neutrality, which was created by Obamaites, but don't forget, one aspect of net neutrality, too, was to make sure that something in the internet didn't happen like it happened here on radio. Talk radio, mostly conservative. The left said, we're not going to let that happen on the internet. So net neutrality was also about content, although they didn't ballyhoo that much. And Obama's FCC made some steps to implement it. Ajit Pai is now in the process of unraveling it. And he's exactly right. Before net neutrality, everything was fine and dandy. There weren't any impositions on speech or anything of the sort. They were just imagined. The left does not want a free and open playing field where they might lose. They have to control everything. One more little bite here from Ajit Pai.
Consider, for example, the leading special interest in favor of Title II, a spectacularly misnamed Beltway special interest called Free Press. Its co-founder and current board member makes no effort to hide the group's true agenda. While he says that we're not at the point yet where we can completely eliminate the telephone and cable companies, he admits that, and I quote, the ultimate goal is to get rid of the media capitalists and the phone and cable companies and to divest them from control. And who would assume control of the internet? Well, the government, of course. The overall goal, as he put it, was to remove brick by brick the capitalist system itself, rebuilding the entire society on socialist principles.
That's exactly right. I doubt there are too many other people in government who would have the guts to call the left out this way in their attempt to take over control of the internet. It was because everything they're doing is rooted in anti-capitalism and anti-Western civilization. And it's always disguised as, we want to make it fair, we want to make it open, we want to make it better, we want to make it free, we want to make it cheaper, we want to make it nice and unoffensive and all this other rot gut crap. It just, I do. I cringe, folks, when I see all these young skulls full of mush just fall for this crap. I know young people, since the beginning of young people, have fallen for this stuff, but I can't help it. It's frustrating beyond belief. This is unbelievable. No, it's actually totally believable. Look at this, the New York Times. Now, remember we told yesterday Obama's going to do a speech. He got paid $400,000 at what's, it's not Sam O'Neill, what is it? It's, I can't remember, Cantor Fitzgerald. New York Times. Obama balances civic-minded side with lure of $400,000. So the New York Times finds Obama can be two people. He can be this guy getting $400,000 and still be a high-minded public servant with no conflict whatsoever. Obama carefully, artfully balancing the two aspects of his career, of his personality, the greedy, money-grubbing speech giver and the public figure who is into publics. Would you be anywhere near seeing this kind of understanding? George W. Bush getting paid for a speech. And then this from the Daily Caller. New biography says young Obama considered gayness. Barack Obama considered being homosexual as young man, according to a forthcoming biography by David Garrow, rising star, The Making of Barack Obama. Oh, no, I'm confused, folks. What, he chose it? Well, I mean, Obama considered being homosexual? Considered? I didn't know. Oh, gee. Well, yeah. I mean, I thought. I didn't think. Oh, man. You have your heroes, and then they just blow up right in front of you. It just happens every day, seemingly. He considered gayness. I don't quite get... Oh. Thank you so much for being here today, my friends. As always, we've got to pack it in and head out for about 21 hours. We'll be back tomorrow, do it all over again. Open line Friday, which, again, remember, whatever you want to talk about is fine, and I'm going to really try hard to take more calls than usual. Promise. See you then.